Global warming may dominate today's environmental headlines, but not so long ago it was acid rain. Caused primarily by emissions of sulphur dioxide and nitrogen oxides from power stations and factories, these oxides form acids that acidify soil, damage plants, and end up in our river systems. Acid rain emerged after the growth of industry, and although the problem peaked in the late 1970s and early 1980s and has largely gone away, at least in Western Europe, its legacy lives on. Planet Earth podcast presenter Richard Hollingham talked to Steve Ormerod, Professor of Ecology at Cardiff University, about the issue and began by asking him about the long-term effects of acid rain.
About half of the length of rivers in upland Wales, that's about 12,000 kilometres overall, have been affected by the problem of acid rain. And what we've been trying to understand, essentially, is the recovery processes that have occurred in our river system, particularly with respect to effects on organisms that live in the river, insects, fish, and then consequences also for things like river birds.
And how have they recovered, or haven't they?
As you would expect, as emissions of acidifying substances have gone down, so the river pHs have slowly come up, something like about 0.2 to 0.3 units every decade. But what intriguingly we're seeing is that there is a mismatch in the speed of recovery in chemical terms, and that actually shown by the organisms that live in rivers. And what we think is that the ecological and biological recovery is lagging behind what you would expect from the change in chemistry.
So the river water is fine and it should support much more life than it does?
The river water, in fact, is fine on average. What we think is the reason why organisms aren't recovering quite so rapidly is that during wet conditions, stormy conditions, exactly of the type that we had this summer, there is a re-acidification, so short duration episodes of acidity that wipe out acid-sensitive organisms, and we think that's what's preventing this longer-term recovery.